Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of remote fundraisers on a temporary or on a permanent basis. So I'll start with the cons and then we'll move on to the pros. So when it comes to having a staff that works primarily remotely, I think that it's fair to say that it's harder to create a cohesive team, and it really depends on whether your organization can make it work. It is more difficult to onboard this kind of staff, and staff supervision can be a challenge for some managers who are used to interacting face to face with a lot of their employees. One of the reasons why it's harder to create a team cohesion in this kind of environment really depends on what proportion of your staff is working remotely. If everyone is working remotely, that's a little different. But if you only have one person working remotely and everyone else is in the office, that remote person may feel like they're being a little bit isolated. And then, depending on who their supervisor is, some generation of managers really believe in sort of 9 to 5 culture and being in the office all the time and sort of desk time, if you wish, while others are a little more flexible and trusting to their employees. So it will also depend on who the hiring manager is. But most importantly, you really need to ask yourself the question as to whether your organization is set up to accommodate someone working remotely on a more permanent basis, and whether you have thought through and accounted for all the different liabilities and provisions that you need to make in order to ensure that that person can be successful in a remote environment. And then it's important to think about sort of how you're going to account for times when this particular person will need to be in the office. So whether it's because you have events that they need to attend and whatnot, so how far away they are from the office will depend. So it's one thing is to have someone working remotely that's within a 2 hour drive from the office. Different thing to have someone who's on a different coast, right? So you have to think through what that would look like. On the pro side, though, it's definitely more employee friendly, particularly for organizations in larger cities, for example. It widens your candidate pool quite a bit. On the flip side, if you're in a smaller city and you don't think that you have a lot of talented fundraising professionals in the area, if you are open to considering people remotely, that opens the possibility for you to be able to tap into a much bigger market of talent. It could result in overall savings. I know a lot of organizations sometimes struggle with office space and they want to expand their team, but they don't have anywhere to put them. So this gives you a good opportunity to do that without having to invest in additional buildings, for example. And then generally increases productivity for self-directed staff. I think this is a really important point is that those who are able to work effectively from home are those that are pretty organized and self-directed, do not need a lot of supervision. Staff that's used to be having a lot of interaction with team members, for example, or is a little bit easily distracted, if you wish, may have a really hard time working from home and may find it isolating. So sometimes you have to also take into consideration their personality. So definitely some pros and some cons as you contemplate whether this is a model you can move on to permanently. I would consider think through these things carefully before you commit one way or another. And when you commit, you go full in because it's not going to be quite the same thing as what you're currently experiencing. Because it's one thing is to have people who have been together in an office for a while and now they're just asked to work remotely. Some of those bonds have already been established. It's a different thing to have people who've never met in person, for example, try to establish bonds. So you're going to have to think through some of these for example. And now a little bit about what we do. We are a recruiting firm that specializes in helping nonprofit organizations find talented senior fundraisers and executive leaders, and we're the most affordable service in the industry. We're quite proud to help organizations of all sizes, and particularly small shops. And we have a very proactive and innovative outreach approach. We pride ourselves in connecting with people one-on-one and we thoroughly screen and detail uh, profiles on all of the candidates that we present to our potential clients. We're always up for a free consultation, so if you wanted to connect with us, feel free to reach out to us at info@charitysearchgroup.com, and we'll happily jump on a call with you and find out a little bit more about your needs.